Earlier, we developed employee management system version 1.0, but it has a limitation. The limitation is there is a temporary data storage because we used collection framework for data storage. Now let's upgrade this employee management system with version 2.0 and overcome the limitation of employee management system 1.0 version. Now in employee management system 2.0, we are going to upgrade the earlier version 1.0 and going to add database support to overcome the limitation. So here we are going to use H2 database, which is inbuilt with Java. So there is no need to install any specific other database management system like MySQL and Oracle. So the feature of the new version will be we are going to implement JDBC to perform the CRUD operations. So earlier functionalities will be same, but we will add the database support to add employee and list employees. In order to work on the current version of employee management system version 2.0, the prerequisite will be everyone should complete employee management system 1.0 implementation before start the current version. And additionally, in case of tools and libraries, we are going to use third-party library, which is for H2 database. In order to work with H2 database, we need additional third-party library, which is jar file. So to download this jar file, this link can be used. So we will download the jar file from Maven repository. Just use this link, and under file section, there will be a link related to the jar file. Just click here, it will download the jar file, and this jar file we are going to use in IntelliJ project. Now add another layer in the application which will be responsible to interact with the database. So just create another class and named it employee DAO. So here create one reference of connection which will represent the database connection. Import this. So this connection is an interface provided by JDBC in Java. Now we need to establish a JDBC connection with the database. Let's perform this inside the constructor. Create a constructor. And here first verify the connection object is null. If this connection is null, then initialize this reference. Use deriver manager class and invoke its method get connection. So this get connection will take three arguments as string, and here first will be the URL of your database file. Now it will be JDBC h2 file, and then we need to provide the path of the file where H2 database will store your data. So provide here the path and give name of the database file. And second argument will be the username and password of the database management system, and by default username will be SA for H2 and the password will be password. So it's showing one error. It's saying unhandled exception. So basically, in order to use get connection, we need to handle the exception and just throw this exception from this constructor. Once the connection is established, we need to create a table in the database. Now create another method who will be responsible to create this table if the table is already not exist. Now first define the query. Create table if not exists imply, and the column will be id as integer and it will be a primary key. Name as varchar and provide the length as 50, and department also varchar having length 10. So this is a query which will create a table in the H2 database. Now execute this query by using this connection object. Now connection provides us a method create statement, and create statement provide us execute update method and pass this query here. So in order to use create statement method here, further we need to handle the exception and add exception to the method. So now we are throwing this exception out of this method. So once this method will be called, this query will be executed in the database and the table will be created with these columns if this table is already not exists. If this table is already exists, so this query will not execute, as we have added one condition create table if not exists. We have established a connection with the database and also we have created the table in the database. Now perform the add operation and list operation using the functions. Now add a public method add imply. It will take an object of type imply bean. Here define the query first. And provide the values. So these are the placeholders. We need to pass ID, name and department. Now provide the values to these placeholders. First will be IID, employee name, and third will be department. So once this statement will execute, the values of these variables will be placed here where we use these placeholders. So D representing to integer values and S is representing to the string values. Now we have created the query. Now use the try catch block and perform the DB operations. In order to perform DB operations, we need to handle SQL type exception. Here, use connection object, then create a statement using create statement, and then execute update method and pass the query here. In case it's returning a value more than 0, it means record has been inserted in the database. So now add a condition here. If result greater than 0, so we need to return a message employee added successfully. Now create another string variable with default value. If this query executed successfully and in the result variable we have a more than 0 value, then update this default message with employee added successfully. So use here variable name message, and in case of any exception, print this exception so that user can aware what happened in the background. And in the last, return the message. Let's recap this method. We created one public method add employee. It will return a string object and will receive an object of type employee being. So inside this function we defined one string variable message and given the default message something went wrong. Then created a string object to hold a query. So we created insert query, insert into employee, and the values will be ID, name, and department. So these are the placeholders where D is representing to integer values and S is representing to string values. So dynamically assign the values to these placeholder using formatted method provided by string object and pass the 3 values in the same sequence we added the placeholders. So first we are passing employee ID, then passing employee name, and then passing get department. So now this query is ready. In order to execute any query, we need to execute a method execute update, and this execute update method is provided by this method create statement, and this create statement method is provided by connection object. So here using connection we are calling this create statement method, and the object returned by this create statement of method we are calling a method execute update and passing this query. If this query is executed successfully, we will get value in this result variable more than 0, and if query is not executed and have some issues, then we will get value less than 0. Now once this query executed, we added the check here if result variable is having a value more than 0, then update message employee added successfully. If this if condition not satisfied, then the default message will be in the message variable, and this message variable we are returning in the end of the method. So ultimately this method is responsible to add employee in the database with the provided values that we are passing in the employee bean object. Add another method which will be responsible to fetch all the available employees in the database. Create a public method which will return a list of employee bean objects. Import this list from the java.util package. Now first of all, define the query. Select star from employee table. Now create a list object. Use array list. This list employee object will hold all the records coming from the database. Now use try and catch and handle SQL exception. And print this exception. And inside that try from the DB operations, use connection object, then invoke a method create statement. Then in case of select query, we will use execute query method. And we'll pass this query. So this execute query method will return us object of type result set. I use result set and import this result set. Now add a check before processing of this result set object and check it's not null. If this result set is not null, means having records coming from the DB, now process all the records and insert into the list employee object. To use while loop, to use this result set and invoke a method result set next rs next. So here we need to pass employee bean object in this add method and pass the values coming from the DB. Get int, it is a method provided by result set. Here we can pass column number or column label, and the label is ID. Then result set dot get string to get name and department. Okay, so basically this employee bean class is not having the constructor which will receive these three parameters. Now update employee bean class, open the employee bean class and add the constructor here. And also add the default constructor. Save it. Now you can see by adding the parameterized constructor in the employee bean class, the error has removed from here. So we are processing all the records coming from the DB using the result set method next. And we adding all the records in the list employee object. Now finally return this list employee object from this method. So now this get employee all employee method is responsible to fetch all the employee records from the DB and will fill into the list employee object. So here first we define the query, and query will be select star from employee, and then with the reference of connection we created the statement using create statement method, and this create statement method turning us an object which have a method execute query. We pass this query, and this execute query method will fetch all the records available in the DB and will return us in the form of object of type result set. Now this RS has all the records in the object that was in DB. Here we are added a check. If this result set object is not null, then we are processing the whole result set by using the rs.next. So rs.next method will move the cursor to the next record and also return the boolean value if after going to the next there is a record. If after moving to the next cursor record is not available, then it will return false and this loop will be closed. Suppose rs.next is returning true. So here in the employee bean class, we are passing ID, name and constructor coming from the DB, because this result set object is providing us getInt method to fetch the integer columns, and getString is used to get the varchar values. We can pass here index of the columns as well as the name of the column, also known as label of the columns. We are passing ID, name and department. We are fetching these values from result set and passing the constructor of employee bean. And this object we are adding into the list employee. So this loop will execute till the records are available in the result set. Once all the records processed, so in the end we are returning this list employee object from this method. So now this all employee method is responsible to fetch all the records from the DB and return as a list of employee bean. Now employee DAO class is ready to use. We have added two methods here. One is add employee and second is get all employee. These two methods are interacting with the database. One is inserting the record in the database and second method is responsible to fetch the available records in the database. Now, in order to use this employee DAO class, make a copy of existing employee service class. And change its name as employee DB service. So in this employee DB service, we can see the existing implementation is interacting with the collection, but now we have to make some changes here and we have to use employee DAO class in this employee DB service. Now first of all, create a reference of employee DAO class. Next, create a constructor. And initialize employee DAO class. Now there is no need of this list employee object. Remove it, and here instead of adding the object of employee being in the list, invoke a method employee DAO. So this is the minor change in add employee existing method. And in case of show employee, create a list of type employee being and invoke a method of employee DAO, which will return all the existing records available in the database. So that's it. These are the minor changes we need to make in the existing employee service class. Now another change we need in the menu class. Here we can see in the existing implementation we are using employee service. It is a old one which interacting with the collection framework, but now we have implemented database. Now change the class name here. That's it. So this is another change. We execute the application and now test the changes. Application has been started. First of all, check the list of employees. It's showing no record found, means in the database currently there is no record. Choose one to add new employee. We provided ID 1 and name Satnam and department as Java. Employee added, press any key to continue. Now check the list of employees. So it's showing one Satnam and department is Java. In order to verify that the record is permanently stored or not, just exit once from this application and execute again and check the list of employees. Now choose 3 to exit from this application. Execute application again and choose 2 to check the list of employees. So here we can see it's showing one record with name Satnam and department Java. It means the record is now permanently stored in the DB.